Hey everyone, welcome to the Wednesday show here with Jim Coventry and I. We're going over the game previews for every Week 11 match, and noticeably, Jim is in office. We have a ton of people here at the RotoWire HQ in Masson. Excited to be talking with you, doing this in person. I guess we're in different studios. It'd be a little bit different if we were handshaking next to each other. But yeah, this will be a good time, Jim. Glad to see you here, and hopefully having a nice stay in Madison over the next day or so. So
Yeah.
let's dive right into the games, and we'll start first with a bit of breaking news that's occurred here with the Chiefs and Bills. Isaiah Pacheco, who has been activated off the injury reserve, at least eligible to practice this week, is not expected to play. That should not be a surprise to a lot of folks. It was reported earlier Saturday that Pacheco is likely returning in late November, which would be the 21-day window in which he's been activated for. So this week, it seems unlikely that he's going to play. I'll be surprised if he plays next week. The way that I read the report, again, Saturday, I think it was either from Schefter or Rappaport, one of the two, was that Pacheco was going to be eligible in 3 weeks, or he was going to be playing in 3 weeks. So if you have Kareem Hunt, you still can use him this week. I still think you can use him next week too, but it might be time to move Kareem Hunt, if you can, to a desperate fantasy manager who needs a starting running back over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Like you said, another week or two of Kareem Hunt, heavy volume. We'll talk about that game in a minute. But yeah, I can't wait to see the Pacheco return. Now, there's going to be a split. There has to be a split, and that's going to be an interesting thing. It's not going to be Pacheco taking all the carries, but I don't think it's 50-50. I think it's more like 75-25. That'll be it because Kareem Hunt is very inefficient. Pacheco will give him a dynamic back in their offense, explosive plays. They haven't had any of those all year. That's going to get that back a little bit.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where even if he comes back in 2 more weeks, we're saying week 13, the Chiefs have already effectively won the AFC West. I mean, I know the Broncos and Chargers are not too bad, but if you're the Chiefs, you're looking at three-peat in the horizon. So by default, splitting with Pacheco and Kareem Hunt allows Pacheco to be ready for when it matters for them, the playoffs. They can afford to do that. The Texans can effectively afford to do that as well too. Reportedly, they did that with Nico Collins this past Sunday against the Lions, where he was ready to play, whatever it was. But well, they already won the AFC South, and will get curb stomped in the first round because they're not all that good of a team. But yeah, I mean that's what you're going to be dealing with now when you have a bunch of teams who are 2-8, 2-9, whatever it might be record wise. That yeah, you could kind of play things safe and look at the schedule. So Chiefs likely not playing Pacheco this week, even though he was activated to practice. It does sound like Juju Smith-Schuster will make his return for the Chiefs, and coupled with DeAndre Hopkins, that receiving core looks a little bit different, looks a little bit better now after the Rashee Rice injury earlier this season.
Realistically, I don't know how many snaps Smith-Schuster plays. They play a lot of 2 and 3 tight end sets. They're going to need Worthy on the field 60% of the time, not because he's a great player, but because his speed at least occupies a safety. I don't think they want – look, Hopkins is what he is. He's a phenomenal possession receiver plus at this point. 2 of them on the field, I think they're redundant. I think Smith-Schuster might get 3 targets a game. But realistically, DeAndre Hopkins is now Mahomes' new best friend, aside from Travis Kelce.
Right, yeah. And let's talk about the game itself. This one's in Buffalo. Bills favor right now by 2.5. The regular season advantage has often went to the Bills. Of course, we know the postseason has been a different matter, whether it be in KC or in Buffalo. I would lean towards the Bills as a possible winner for this. They're sitting at 8-2, Chiefs 9-0. Chiefs have been getting by with the skin, the hair on their chinny chin chin is how I'll be saying it to my 3-year-old at least. It's been very close, discomforting, but Chiefs fans have been able to benefit from the undefeated streak thus far. That might come to a head, but the status of both Amari Cooper and, probably more importantly for this matchup, Dalton Kincaid kind of looms in this one. We're doing the show on Wednesday. It sounds like Dalton Kincaid is closer to not playing than Amari Cooper is. Dawson Knox is one of those guys, at least on the waiver wire show that we were talking about yesterday. What's the idea for Amari Cooper and Dalton Kincaid, and will their playing status directly impact the result of this one?
The Cooper status is huge, and I've been mentioning this since the week they acquired him, even when they played him limited snaps the first 2 weeks. Defenses have to play them very differently with Cooper on the field. When Cooper's not on the field, there is no pass catcher a defense respects. So what do? You pack it in, you tighten the windows, and we saw Josh Allen has not put up eye-popping numbers. In the 2 games Amari Cooper played, defenses already had to respect it, and you saw Keon Coleman when he was healthy going off. We saw bigger games from Khalil Shakir. Even when Cooper wasn't getting pass targets, it didn't matter. And that his presence on the field means a lot. Now, remember, it's Spagnuolo's defense of the Chiefs facing them, and Spagnuolo knows Josh Allen very well. But again, the Cooper presence will make a difference because Spagnuolo will have a bigger bag of tricks if there's no Cooper. If Cooper is there, I think they can get to 24 points.
Yeah, I guess. What about Kincaid's aspect too? Like, is Dawson Knox somebody
Yeah.
if Kincaid's out that you're saying must be a must play? Because maybe that's the possibility. 4 teams on bye. A lot of them are bad, like the Panthers and Giants. But it's possible that if Kincaid doesn't play, is Dawson Knox a factor at all?
They have very different roles. Dalton Kincaid is realistically moved in the slot, and he's a slot receiver. Dawson Knox sees his best usage when they get in the red zone. He is a favorite of Josh Allen's when he's on the field and they're in the red zone. Now, he hasn't been on the field a lot, but he will be. So I think when you look at Dawson Knox is you look at a touchdown-dependent dart throw. He probably gets 2 or 3 catches, probably 15 to 20 yards. But if he gets a touchdown, all of a sudden he's fantasy relevant, and those are always coin flips.
Yeah. Let's transition to the other big news of today. Anthony Richardson announced as the restarter, or I guess returning starter for the Colts. Oh, yeah.
We got to go to the other side of the ball, though, on the Chiefs, because this one's a big deal. Styles make fights, Joe. And so Buffalo, their base defense is 5 defensive backs. They live by that. So they play nickel defense. They play that's how they play, regardless of opponent. They really don't change that. This is where the Chiefs, with their heavy personnel and running down, this is where it's 2 opposite styles. One team, the Bills, gives you the run. The Chiefs want the run, and the Bills are very good against the pass. I think they're going to give them that, and Kareem Hunt's going to get his 26 carries for 85, 90 yards, but it's going to be move the chains type runs, nothing explosive. So I think that's going to slow this game down because time of possession, when you're running the ball, clock keeps moving. Yep. And I think this game could be lower scoring than many expect.
Over under at 46, if you were to say, let's throw into a teaser at 53, I would feel very, very comfortable taking the under, and even under on 46 makes complete sense. Yeah, good point with the rushing attack for the Chiefs and the Bills' willingness to allow teams to go ahead and run the ball. Sorry. I was jumping ahead because I want to talk about Anthony Richardson and the Colts. Again, Richardson now announced as the starter. Evidently, rest of season. We heard Shane Steichen say that for Joe Flacco as well, too. So we'll see. And, Richardson's already an injury risk as it is with the way his game style is. So Richardson as the starting quarterback rest of season means little to me when it's being announced, but it does matter from a pass catching perspective. I don't think the 2 weeks is going to suddenly make Anthony Richardson a prolific thrower. I mean, he was under 50% completion rate. Guys like Josh Downs and Michael Pittman both had their fantasy values completely tank when Richardson was the quarterback, but Richardson was probably dropped in a few leagues, at least shallower leagues, with the idea that, oh yeah, he's not going to start or he's been really bad. Are you picking up Richardson as a streaming quarterback play? And do you feel comfortable saying any of the Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, if he plays, and Alec Pierce's have any sort of fantasy value that they did before with Flacco?
There's the one saving grace. It was in Richardson's last game. Josh Downs actually had 100 yards, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so the fact he did that, I think it was 4 for 109 and a touchdown. And the fact he did that gives us some hope. And I know Downs plays about 65 to 70% of the snaps, the primary slot guy. But I do think those are throws that there's a connection between those two. So I think, look, there could be a bad game. So Downs is somebody who's boom bust. You trust him as a flex. He could go well. I don't trust anybody else. And Anthony Richardson, look, we were seeing some borderline barely double-digit fantasy point games until we see something tangible that he's a different player. Other than an emergency in a 2-quarterback league, I don't think you could put him in a lineup.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's possible. I mean, remember when Justin Fields, what was that, week 8 onward 2 or 3 years ago, became a top 3, top 4 fantasy quarterback? There's that possibility. The rushing floor certainly for Richardson matters. If Shane Steichen wanted to incorporate Jonathan Taylor more to the Colts offense and therefore allow more of a play-action play, we've been talking about that. Mario and I on the SiriusXM show Friday have been saying, let's just use Jonathan Taylor more and Richardson becomes better. If the whole scheme changes, then Richardson might be a better fantasy asset, but we're asking a whole lot of a team that seems pretty dysfunctional. I mean, that's a fair characterization when the Flacco-Richardson switches happen. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. Does the Jets' defense become a streaming candidate out of this with Richardson now as the quarterback?
It's tough because, look, the biggest mistake the Jets made, they made a ton of them this year, was firing Robert Saleh. That defense played their butts off for him for a couple of years when they had no offense, and they had to be discouraged, and they played hard. When Saleh got fired, you could see that defense no longer has a chip on their shoulder. Individuals are good players, but I don't see this Jets defense as they have moments, they have flashes. But I don't think they're invested anymore. And I think with each passing week, it's growing more toxic there. So yeah, you could stream the Jets and take your chances. I think this whole team is going to fall apart more than they have, and it's going to be very rapid.
Well, it seems like it's a loser leave town match then for both the Jets and Colts. Jets favored by 3.5 right now. I tend to think the Jets are at once more dysfunctional than the Colts, but also can win a game more likely than the Colts. I could be wrong. We know the Jets' run defense isn't all that good, and Jonathan Taylor is the one bright spot for that offense. How do you see this game shaping up?
Yeah, so look, the Jets are a bad run defense. Bringing Richardson back really helps Jonathan Taylor because when you think about the game plan, and again, who knows what the Jets' game planning level is right now, right. But the whole point would be is this: look, they're not going to throw the ball well, so you got those three great corners, but they only need two of them on the field in this one because you could load up the box with Anthony Richardson instead of Flacco. Again, you have those RPO looks that are potentially there. Mm-hmm. That opens up space for Jonathan Taylor. And it's a very bad run defense. So I think even if they commit an extra body, having Richardson on the field, I think Jonathan Taylor is going to get you 100 yards this week. And I think this could be a very heavy run-based game. I think they don't want to overexpose Anthony Richardson, and I don't think this is a game they're chasing points. I don't think he needs to throw the ball more than 17, 18 times.
Over-under at 43.5. That might be an under again for me out of that matchup. If both offenses are a little bit lackluster, and the Colts certainly not pressing their foot on the pedal with Flacco, turnover-wise, touchdown-wise, otherwise, for that one. So are you taking the Jets to win or taking cover at 3.5?
I took the Colts to win 19-17.
Okay. Yep. So the under on that one, Colts at least covering. That's fair with that. Let's transition to the Thursday game. Another really good one. Thank you, NFL schedule makers, for making these Thursday games not Jacksonville versus the Tennessee Titans like it's been like 4 years before. I'll give credit for that one to Amazon, if nothing else. Commanders traveling to Philadelphia with not the NFC East on the line. They'll play in a couple more weeks. And if there's a split, then there's obviously a potential for either team to win. But certainly, who is dominating the NFC East division is going to be decided Thursday night. Now, Commanders did lose to the Steelers. I thought Jaden Daniels and offense performed better than I was anticipating. You and I had talked last week saying we think the Steelers are going to win. It's TJ Watt defense. That's way different than anything else I've seen this year. And they scored points. That's what mattered the most. And the defense and the Commander side of things held up well enough. This is a different game. It's a divisional game, and the Eagles are hot. And this is in Philadelphia. How do you see this one looking out?
So what's interesting is, and this is my big question before the Steelers game, they had the great pass rush. Would they hem Jaden Daniels in the pocket and keep him there? Mm-hmm. Because when teams rush from the interior, he's been able to break, contain, and make big plays on the ground. And the Steelers, because they lost Highsmith late in that game, but because they had two edge rushers, they were disciplined. They kept it 3 rushes, 5 yards for Jaden Daniels. He had nothing on the ground. Well, the Eagles have had a great pass rush as it's gotten over the year, gotten better and better, but a lot of it comes from the interior. And I'm worried for the Eagles that interior pass rush is going to force Daniels to run, and I think there's going to be big running opportunities for him. Now, in terms of the passing game, they've used a lot of passes to the flats and bombs. Well, Vic Fangio's defense is probably not giving them the deep stuff. They've gotten very good at their communication with the safeties. They're not giving up big plays, so Terry McLaurin's going to have to live underneath, which hasn't been the best usage of him this year, although he's capable of doing it. Right. This is going to be interesting because I do think that Fangio's smart enough to realize how this offense functions, and I think they're going to have an answer for that run game. That run game drives the train. Philly's tough to run on. And I think they have a tactical advantage here. So it's going to be a lot of broken offense where Daniels is going to have to make plays to do that. And he can. That's how I see that side of the ball.
Brian Robinson, running back for the Commanders, has missed the previous 2 games with that hamstring injury. He was a limited participant in Tuesday's practice. It sounds like today, as of this recording, will effectively learn the stats, which makes sense. They play Thursday. But head coach for the Commanders was saying that Brian Robinson's practice regimen will be effectively decided today. So I would assume Brian Robinson's closer playing than not, and this being an important game, he might be thrown out there, given typically how tough he is, or that's his feet around the NFL. Does Brian Robinson playing matter much, though, against this Eagles defense that's pretty good against the run?
Yeah, I don't think it does. We know that they're going to put some heavy personnel sets up with extra tight ends, but the Eagles are equipped to handle that. The Eagles have a beast front four right now and anchored by that middle, and they like to run interior. And so I don't think this is a good matchup. And Brian Robinson, like I said, we're recording, like you said, on Wednesday, and he had limited practices last week and didn't play. And if he missed Sunday with a hamstring, it's going to be really hard to think he's coming back on a Thursday. So we'll see how that goes, like you said. But I don't think it makes a difference. I really think that the Eagles have been stuffing the run, and this team does not have the juice, I think, to overcome that.
On the Eagles side, offensively, you're playing all the studs, right? A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Saquon Barkley. Is there anything that you're saying this guy will have an even better game because the Commanders' defense is doing X thing?
The Commanders are very well coached. Dan Quinn really took a defense with personnel I thought was problematic, and he's done some great things with it. I do think Mike Saintstra, who's been playing very good at corner, I think A.J. Brown's a tough ask. Marshawn Lattimore probably is not playing here. He still has that hamstring injury he had before he got traded over. Don't think about it. And I think he's not a good matchup for A.J. Brown anyway. A.J. Brown could beat him. So I think A.J. Brown's going to be able to eat here. He should get close to 80 yards and maybe even flirt with 100. Devontae Smith, his usage has been really, really weird. There are games they're not throwing him targets, games they use him in the slot a little bit more when Brown is healthy. Really, Saquon Barkley should get going here. The Commanders been a very good run defense, but I think that Philly offensive line is a big hurdle for them, and I don't think they're going to be able to overcome that. Jordan Mailata, we don't know if he's playing as of this recording. He did get his IR return to win practice window. If he plays, it's even better. But Barkley should do well here.
Okay, let's move over to the Bears and Packers game. This was in Chicago, of course. The Bears fired offensive coordinator Shane Waldron. This is the third time now that the Bears have fired an offensive coordinator after year one, or in this case, during year one of the rookie quarterback. You would think they would learn. You would have thought they maybe would learn with Eberflus as your head coach. That seems to be a lame duck situation as well, too, with the Bears now faltering over the past month. Rivalry game, Packers coming off a bye week. And yet, as a Packer fan, I'm nervous. I don't know if that's just because I'm conditioned to be nervous about this thing. If the Packers pass rush, which has been not very good this year, can't generate sacks against this team, with the Patriots of all teams getting 9 last week, whatever it was, I'm very nervous as a Packer fan. So how do you see it? I mean, is the offense going to be dramatically different by default with Shane Waldron gone?
I don't think they can make that quick of a change. They didn't fire him until Tuesday, and game plans were already being installed by that time. So I just think, look, this week they roll with what they have. There's no way you could bring in something at this point. Everything's regimented in the NFL. The type of Wednesday, Thursday practice, the Friday walkthrough, they're past that point. So they have to roll with what they have. The play calling might be a little different. I just don't think this week could be a tangible difference. And look, the Packers may not have a good pass rush, Joe, but they've done some things schematically in their last couple games before the bye where they've been mixing it up a little bit. And I think the Bears, they had both tackles missed last week. They probably aren't playing here. This Bears line cannot pick up a simulated pressure to save their lives, and that's some of what the Packers were starting to do. And coming out of a bye, they had time to game plan for this. I think they're going to realize, look, if you get any pressure, you're able to really just throw this offense off the rails. And the problem would be that the Bears are not going to have an answer for it. It's just they haven't. They're not going to have it right now, and so I think they're doomed. And DeAndre Swift, it's a favorable matchup, but again, the offense is so disjointed right now. I don't think they're moving the ball here.
Yeah, he's the pass-catching running back, which matters. Like, if you think the Packers are going to get out to a lead early on, there's probably check-down opportunities for Swift. But if the pass rush is causing such a chaos or whatever else, and you have Swift blocking, well, then it doesn't matter. Then you're negating the pass-catching running back. I don't think either of us are saying bench DeAndre Swift. Again, 4 teams on bye, you might not have that choice. But as a player that was looking like a top 10, top 12 fantasy running back for a long duration of time, until things change, especially with the pass blocking or Caleb Williams' decision-making, quick throws out of the pocket would make a difference too. Swift might be more like a running back 2, high end maybe, but running back 2 sort of play.
Definitely is. He's going to get enough volume here. He'll probably get you, anywhere from 65 to 90 scrimmage yards, which is fine. You'll take that. Probably a 30% chance to score, and he'll probably catch 2 to 4 passes. So yeah, he's definitely in that running back 2 mix.
You do a lot of the weekly ranking stuff for us, and from a receiver perspective, whether it be Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, I think more or less is a starting guy. There's a lot of Packer guys that are fringe starters, but not guaranteed starters. I think Jaden Reed qualifies. Of course, Josh Jacobs qualifies. I think Tucker Kraft is close to that. Again, Trey McBride's on bye, a few teams like that. From the Christian Watson, Dobbs perspective and other receivers, is there anyone that you said this matchup makes sense to play X player for this game?
Yeah, really the Bears are most attackable in the middle of the field, and sometimes they'll move Watson there, but not reliably. And Dobbs is a perimeter core outside receiver, and he's not really moving a whole lot. So I don't like the matchup for their receivers. This is a Josh Jacobs game. The Bears are not good against the run. They're a great pass defense. They're a well below average run defense, and Josh Jacobs should have a very high volume game. Jaden Reed, he he has up and down games. This is a game they should be able to manipulate the middle of the field. The strong safety for the Bears been out multiple weeks.
Over a month with a concussion, Brisker. Yeah.
So crazy. This is pretty significant. But even if Brisker comes back, I think this is a game where Jaden Reed really gets going. And remember, last week in the second half of the season, they really got him ramped up. I think that's going to happen again. Tucker Kraft, this is a good matchup. The Bears are below average against tight ends. Tucker Kraft, no A-dot for him. Everything's short, but he gets yards after the catch. But defense have to respect all those Packers receivers. So that's why the field's opened up, and that's going to be there. I like Tucker Kraft this week.
Jair Alexander should be back for the Packers secondary. Marshawn Lloyd is expected to be activated off of injured reserve. Now the Packers have Jacobs. They've been using Chris Brooks, the former Dolphins guy. They still have Emmanuel Wilson. So even if Marshawn Lloyd is activated, I'm like, maybe you could pick him up speculatively, but there's enough other guys in that backfield that I'm not even interested in Marshawn Lloyd at that point. I was lower on him entering the year, so maybe that's part of it, but just keep that in mind with the Packers backfield. I see a lot of questions in the chat pertaining to start sits. Good news is Jim's got you covered Sunday morning after the XM show, 10 to 11 Eastern? Is that correct that you do the XM show and then it's the start sit stuff?
Yeah, so it'll be 11 Eastern, 10 our time. Yes,
Perfect.
And 2 hours before the main slate kicks off. Definitely get you over on the channel you're watching on right now.
Unless it's some of the obvious ones, like I saw a Downs or Tillman. To me, Tillman was the obvious start. I would answer those in the chat as best I can when I see obvious ones. But otherwise, Jim's got you covered with all that stuff. Or at Jim Coventry NFL on Twitter. He'll help you out with whatever the ones. Jim's one of the best when it comes to the fantasy industry and getting all the start-sit questions whenever you have them out there. So just in case you are in the chat looking for that, we got you covered on Sunday with the sits, I should say. Start spits. That's not good.
Yeah, sometimes that's what it is.
Yeah, you're right. All right, let's talk about the Jaguars and Lions. It's already been announced that Trevor Lawrence is not starting for Jacksonville this week. No real surprise. Jacksonville right now is sitting for the number 1 overall pick because they are very bad and they are very badly coached. No shocker. We've been telling people that for now weeks at this point. And then the Lions, coming off that win, 5-interception game by Goff over the Texans, favored by 14 in Detroit. And yet I'm going to take the Lions because they beat the bad teams like they did the Titans a couple weeks ago. Like that's just what they do. They're well coached. They can throttle the teams they need to and will win games against teams that are giving games away, like the Texans last week. That's what the Lions do.
The Lions defense has been much better than anybody anticipated coming into the season. They play some heavy press man. They do blitz. They get good pressure on the quarterback. We know that weeks ago, the left tackle Cam Robinson got traded away and it was a bad line to start. So Mac Jones can be under a lot of pressure and it's a great run defense. And Bigsby hurt his ankle, so I don't know that he plays. If he does, I'm not worried. ETN hasn't looked good. So if you can't run the ball and you're in obvious passing situations against a defense that's going to bring pressure and cover, usually I like Brian Thomas, maybe not with Mac Jones. I don't like really anybody in the pass-catching game for them this week. I think they're going to really have a hard time moving the football.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's Mac Jones throwing the football, then it's another part of it too. Evan Ingram is a check-down guy. I think when he had 5 for 30 last week. In a full-point PPR, still playing Evan Ingram. But in a flex capacity, you're right with Brian Thomas, but he probably is on the lower fade list. Given the explosiveness that he had with Trevor Lawrence, is by default not there when it's Mac Jones throwing the football, and that's part of the issue with Jacksonville's offense. Is it possible that you would not want to play the studs for the Lions because they could win by the first half? I mean, for that to occur, typically you need your studs to do well, but from a volume perspective, if David Montgomery gets more than 15 carries, I'd be a little bit surprised because the Lions should be dominating, and same goes for Jahmyr Gibbs and even Amon-Ra St. Brown as well too.
The model for the Lions is when they have a lead, they don't pass. 25 or less attempts, they'd like to get 18 to 20. That's where they really like to be. And run. And that's what they're going to drain the clock out. They're going to, choke you out like in an MMA fight. That's what they're going to do. And so Jared Goff's not going to throw a lot of passes. He's going to have to get 2 or 3 touchdowns on low volume. That's the risk you're taking. And if those touchdowns don't go in, you're going to get maybe 200 yards, and that's going to be it. So that's problematic. You start Amon-Ra St. Brown. Look, there was a game he had 2 targets. He scored on one of them, so you're playing him. Laporta's tough. Now I know he's had 50 yards in maybe 4 of the last 5 games, but usually, last week he had a 6-target game. He's normally 1 to 3 targets. They're not going to throw much this week, most likely. So Laporta is a risky tight end start because he has to get something big going on a very, very limited number of pass attempts.
Yeah, and he's banged up too, listed as day-to-day.
Yes.
It's entirely possible that Dan Campbell says, well, this Jacksonville team stinks. Like, we could probably do this without – we could use Brock Wright or whoever is the backup tight end for the Lions. Something to consider for Laporta. You're right. I think he probably is closer to the 10 through 14 tight end range than the at this point it was trending up to like the 5 through 8 range. It felt like for Laporta, given a matchup, this is not a positive one for game script wise, at least for Laporta in volume. Let's go to the Raiders Dolphins. Dolphins picked up a big win Monday night over the Rams. I was a little bit surprised. I thought the Rams would do better against this defense, which has been kind of non-existent. Thankfully for the Dolphins, they face a basically non-existent team in the Raiders itself, who are treading water as well. I mean, like you might need to play Jacoby Myers from the offense. I don't really want to have any interest in Alexander Madison. Brock Bowers is obviously the only stud for the Raiders overall. Like this is kind of a gross game. Over under at 44.5. I think the over hits because the Dolphins can pile up points, but it's possible that both teams just kind of stink because the records are reflective of teams that aren't very good.
I'll tell you, Joe, as a betting man, the trap games and the Dolphins, they looked like they were playing for the Super Bowl on Monday night against the Rams. I didn't see that. It was a non-conference game. I know they had to win. I get it. But they looked like they were playing for the Super Bowl. And it's a short week, and they played in L.A., and they got to fly all the way over to Miami. So it's an early week, but it's a cross-country flight. It's a short week, coming off a big win, playing an inferior team. This game's going to be ugly. It's going to be way uglier than we think. That's just the way these things happen. And so the Raiders, start Jacoby Myers, and he's going to get enough targets to get you some PPR value. The stud corner,
Jalen Ramsey.
Ramsey plays the slot a lot. So I think that they just put him inside. They like him in the middle of the field. They like him to be in the action. So I think that doesn't bother Jacoby Myers. He's going to be on the outside. He'll be fine. Bowers is going to get his. They're going to have to do a little bit. Like I said, the running game, probably not so much here. On the other side of the ball, look, the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill, you count him as a flex. That's all. And you hope he scores a touchdown. Same with Jalen Waddle. And you're hoping he does something there. Achane didn't have a good game last week, but he should be okay here. But the Raiders have been way better against the run than the pass. But again, Achane, obviously, there's a floor. And Mostert didn't have a carry. Now, the coach, Mike McDaniel, he said that it was something that had to do with the game. Whatever. It looked to me like he was relegated out as well, the week of the relegated running back. But so Achane's fine, and then you're just really hoping that Tua, if you start Tua, you're just hoping he gets 2 touchdowns for you because it's just an unhealthy offense.
Would you play Jonnu Smith over Sam Laporta? We were just talking about that, given the game script issues and injuries with Sam Laporta. Jonnu Smith was, I think he was only 20% rostered in Yahoo leagues as of yesterday, so he's probably widely available if you want to pivot that direction.
Yeah, he's getting 4 to 6 targets every game. They're using him on a lot of catch and run things. He just missed a touchdown last week. Yeah, I would play Jonnu Smith.
Over Laporta, right?
Yeah, I would play him over an injured Laporta in a game they're probably going to crush. Yes.
Yeah, that's why we're asking these questions, because I think that's probably a decision people can make pretty easily in almost every sort of roster or lineup out there. So let's move over to the Rams Patriots. Patriots got the win over the Bears. We talked about the Rams losing a game they should not have lost to. I thought in the Dolphins, that really is going to affect things from a playoff perspective. This should be another one that you'd categorize as the Rams shouldn't lose to the Patriots. And the Patriots have not been a very good offense all year. They really didn't produce that many points against the Bears, as the Bears were just so inept offensively that you could capitalize on the short fields. You have Kyren Williams, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua all healthy and back. That should make the Rams offense really good. And yet, I don't get what happened Monday night. So is there another curveball in the works? When we talk about the short week, traveling East Coast, same concept here applying to the Rams.
I think because the Rams are coming off a loss, I think that plays way differently than Miami coming off a win. I think they know they have to win this game, and they're a veteran team. And I think that's going to play in this. You're right. The same dynamics are in play, but Miami coming off a win. And I point out they play like they won the Super Bowl. And to me, that's an emotional toll that they put out way too much emotional energy in that game. And I know it sounds stupid. It's like bad analysis, but this happens all the time. But the Rams is a business trip right now, because if they lose this game, they probably are going to be close.
They're out.
They're out. So they can't lose this game. And here's the thing. So what I learned about the Rams, and I had to think back to last year when they had some struggles, especially in the playoff game against the Lions. When the Rams are between the 5 and the 20-yard line, they struggle. Teams, there are more bodies compressed, and Kupp and Nacua need the middle of the field. And in that area, there's not a middle of the field. And they couldn't score touchdowns in that game against the Lions. We saw it against last week against the Dolphins.
6 field goal attempts,
Yeah, the Dolphins just took away the middle of the field when they got in the red zone, and they can't function there. If they're inside the 5, Kyren Williams punches it in, and they're fine. But if they don't get it inside the 5, they can't. Now, New England's not a good defense. They've lost way too many people. They're not going to have the stylistic matchup like Gonzalez is an outside corner. Good luck. They're not going to be able to gum up the middle of the field. So the Rams should be able to move the ball at will. And again, the run defense for the Patriots is bad. And so I do think Kyron Williams gets going here. And then that on the other side, that pass rush, they've really developed a Jared Verse.
Oh, yeah.
They've
Fisk
really,
as well, too. Another rookie as well, too. He's been fantastic.
Fisk has been excellent, too. And so they've been really putting together something here. And the Patriots, their line is bad. And so they're probably going to trail here. So I do think the Rams could run away with this one coming off the big loss of last week.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. Again, 4.5 points. This is in New England. I have more confidence the Rams can generate production on a drive-to-drive basis than I do Drake May. And I've been really impressed with Drake May. From a dynasty perspective, you like Jaden Daniels, obviously, is number one. I still like Caleb Williams, but Drake May is right up there above Bo Nix in my mind, certainly above Michael Penix whenever he ends up playing. So I'm really impressed. Once the Patriots add weapons, this could be different, but they need to add weapons, an offensive line, more depth on defense. This is a multi-year rebuild, and in that regard, I think Drake May is going to have to suffer a little bit more, despite his prominence and excellence, I think, for what he's been given. So anything else with the Patriots, or are we going to move on to the next game?
No, we can move on.
All right, so I'm perversely interested in this one. The Browns traveling to New Orleans. Saints pulled off the win of all wins, I thought, against the Falcons, and I get so annoyed because every time I think the Falcons have figured out that they are at least a top 10, top 12 team in the NFL, they do something dumb, inexplicably lose to the Saints. Yes, it's an NFC South battle. Yes, that's a rivalry that matters much in the same way the Packers-Bears does. I knew all that, and I thought, no, there's still no way. The Saints have nothing. Right. MVS is your starting receiver. There's no way the Falcons can lose, and yet they did. Browns coming off a bye. Saints win, I think, their Super Bowl against their hated division rival, the Falcons. Is it possible that we see the Browns trounce this team? I mean, other than Jameis Winston, they're getting healthier. It's the team that we thought they were going to be, and Winston's probably an upgrade over Deshaun Watson. So I think the Browns should win, and yet the Saints are favored by 1 in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the Browns have been tough. I've been tough watches here. The entire line is healthy. They were healthy the game before the bye, and then they sat Jedrick Wills. They were ticked at him because he sat himself out at some point. But they were off the bye. They should have everybody back. Nick Chubb has had that bye after coming back for a couple games. The Saints can't tackle, so They should be able to run. Cedric Tillman has a great matchup. All the injuries at corner, and Marshawn Lattimore traded away. So, yeah, I think they're going to be fine here. Defensively, last week, Atlanta can't get pressure on the quarterback. So Derek Carr, of course, he gets 2 deep passes to Marquez Valdes-Scantling. That's not the case here. We have Myles Garrett. And I know they traded away Zadarius Smith. It was nice to have him, but Myles Garrett, and he has enough around him, Ogbo Okoronkwo, Dalvin Tomlinson, they're fine. They're going to get pressure, and they're very good against the run, so this isn't a great Alvin Kamara game. So, yeah, you start Kamara for fantasy, of course, because between the catches and the runs, he'll get you where you need to be. But this is one where, yeah, I think the Browns should have a great opportunity. They should have some turnovers. I think they win this game fairly easily.
Is Nick Chubb an automatic start for you as a running back 2 in flex?
He's definitely about running back 24, so that's right on that cusp of both. I think he's getting enough volume. This is a very, very good matchup. The line should be good enough. So, yeah, I think you use him here for volume.
Yeah, I'm again, if the Browns do what I think they're going to do, then Nick Chubb is getting 20 carries or close to that, despite whatever other backs that could be in there. And Winston can throw the ball all he wants. That might happen. This is a sneaky revenge game, right? Because Winston did have a stint with the Saints. But we'll end up seeing what happens. I think the Browns should win or at least be comfortable against this Saints offense, which I don't know how they generate production like they did last week. A battle of the AFC North teams that have not really faced each other yet, and also from a divisional perspective, one that matters a lot. Ravens traveling to Pittsburgh. Ravens favored by 3. I think that's the right call. Like, if we're saying Ravens or Steelers, who's going to win? The Ravens on paper are a better team. They've done more offensively, and the Steelers have gotten better with Russell Wilson, are still an offense that we thought would be at best middle of the pack this year. It is in not Heinz Field, but it is in Pittsburgh. And we know the Steelers can do and grime up games and win them that way. Is it possible the Steelers pull off the upset?
It's possible. Here's the thing. Russell Wilson's putting up fantasy numbers. He's making big plays. He's awful. Anything short and intermediate, he's toast. He can throw a slant. He actually can throw a pass to the flat. He can throw, but the deep, the moon ball, he can still throw the moon ball. Yeah. And he's had games where George Pickens and last week Mike Williams making big plays. Those are there. And guess what? Baltimore can't stop the deep pass this year to
Right.
save their lives. So styles make fights again. I said that earlier in the show, and it applies here. Russell Wilson's going to have – this is going to be a higher scoring game than we think because the Ravens are going to score points. And Alex Highsmith, one of the other edge rushers across from TJ Watt.
Sounds like he'll be out. Yep.
Yeah,
but they have Preston Smith to replace
but Alex Highsmith's a game wrecker.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
So he's like one of those elite guys that nobody talks about because TJ Watt. So missing that's important because now all of a sudden you can't really hem in Lamar Jackson, which they potentially could have done. So now this just opens up. So there's gonna be points scored. So with the Steelers side, if you need to stream Russell Wilson, he could make 2 or 3 big plays in this one. He can run for a little bit maybe in this one too. I could see that happening. The run game's probably not going to do a lot. The Ravens are very good against the run without devoting extra bodies to it. So we don't see much going there. From the Steelers standpoint, you're starting George Pickens happily. You got him as a top 10-ish receiver this week because the matchup couldn't be better. Look, Mike Williams played 12% of the snaps last week. He had 1 target. It was a touchdown. If you're in a really deep league and you got to get a dart throw, he could get a deep one against his team very easily because the defense can't focus on him when they got George Pickens. So there's that.
Yeah, I liked Mike Williams a lot from a waiver wire perspective on the Tuesday show. I thought he's a pickup, if nothing else, rest of season that benefits from the one thing you mentioned Russell Wilson does well, the moon ball. It can be a moon ball to George Pickens, but you can also do it to Mike Williams. And Mike Williams is a great jump ball specialist and a deep ball specialist like we saw with the Chargers and Phillip Rivers way back in the day. Would you start Nick Chubb over Najee Harris? Maybe that's another example with, again, Najee Harris banged up. It sounds like he could play, should play, but Nick Chubb in a better matchup against the Saints.
Yes, I would start Nick Chubb over Najee Harris this week. I think Jalen Warren's going to carve out a little bit more of a role. He was decent last week, and I think they're going to need him as a pass catcher in this game to try to overcome some of the Ravens' ability to stop the run. I think they might need to go to that card a little bit more.
I have a conundrum with Chuba Hubbard on bye where I'm probably playing Swift over Najee Harris, but that would be the one where it's close. And I think Swift, from his PPR perspective, I feel more comfortable.
Yes.
Najee Harris has been really good and doing a lot of Steelers stuff. It's a different animal when you're going against some of the league's incompetent teams and the Ravens. Despite their defense being bad, I think the Ravens know a little bit more of what to do against the Steelers. All right, let's talk about the Vikings and Titans. Another week with Will Levis as the starter, another week with Sam Darnold as the starter for the Vikings. He has kind of turned back into a pumpkin, possibly predictably over the past 3 or 4 weeks. Aaron Jones sounds like he'll play. He's been the most banged up of the obvious starting running backs, but it sounds like he should be ready to go for this one. Vikings favored by 6, the over-under only at 39.5. I mean, that's a far cry from what the Vikings offense have been doing earlier this season.
Yeah, this game's going to go under most likely. I had this one going 20-13. It's not going to be a lot of scoring here. The Titans are not a great defense, and they played some easy opponents, but they're a solid defense. They're a solid average defense. And like you said, Sam Darnold right now making a lot of mistakes. He got away with a lot of those mistakes early in the year, which kind of glossed it over. But now he's not getting away with them quite as much. And the Lions, the Titans don't get a lot of pressure. They will try to at least, we've seen them try simulated pressures, and I think they will have some ability to get Darnold off key here. Aaron Jones should be good enough, but it's not a great matchup for him. So I think they get just enough done. Titans side, look, they're in a lot of trouble here. Tony Pollard, look for volume. You play him as a running back too. Hope he gets in the end zone. He's been great behind a bad line. Kelvin really is a bad matchup because Will Levis is going to see a lot of complicated looks from Brian Flores' defense. And I know he's had 3 good weeks in a row, but before, remember, he had like some goose egg games. We could be closer to the goose egg game than we could the productive ones he's had.
Is it because Hopkins was there and now Hopkins is gone? I've seen that narrative quite a bit.
Yeah, I think, 2 games were Mason Rudolph. And Mason Rudolph, we saw him like breathe George Pickens to life last year. Sure. So I think there was a modicum of that involved. And then last week, just the matchup kind of worked out. And I know the Vikings are not good at corner, but the confusing looks are going to be a problem for Levis. Levis gets really skittish when he's under pressure, and I just don't see him functioning down. He's not going to have a lot of time to throw here. I know the pressure rate for the Vikings is low, but the confusion looks they speed the quarterback up. Levis can't be sped up, or he's in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I think you're playing Ridley because there's junk time production, and he's been the focal point of the offense, especially with Hopkins gone. But I don't think it's going to be 2 touchdowns, 130 yards, whatever it was, like it was the Chargers in the past couple weeks. It certainly is going to be a lesser production point, and I think the Vikings, they should win comfortably. I would have thought the Vikings would win comfortably against Jacksonville last week, and that didn't occur. So maybe this is the we need to really start changing our narrative tune. But let's see the Vikings beat another AFC South team here first before we go any further with that. Let's go to the Falcons Broncos. I already talked about commiserating with the Falcons and how bad they've been. The Broncos have been a surprising team. They beat the bad teams. They lose to the good teams. They should have beat the Chiefs last week. Yes, You'd love to see more of the offense. And now we add the Audric Estime part of this where he gets 15 carries last week. Seems to have pushed up to Javonte Williams as the starting running back. Javonte Williams is a unrestricted free agent this offseason. So this could be Sean Payton saying, yeah, let's go with our rookie, the guy we drafted and invested in a bit more than Javonte Williams. The Estime part of things first. He is an obvious pickup in every league, right? Just given the volume.
He has to be. And I don't know what his role is this week. Could it have been a one-week role? I mean, he wasn't great with 15-43 on the ground or something like that. It wasn't great, but he's got right now, the only assumption we make is he took the job. And Javonte Williams was playing well. You may have hit on something with the unrestricted free agent thing. Maybe they're at the but they're in the playoff and they're high in the playoffs. This is a team that's playing for something. Javonte Williams gives them a lot more in elusiveness than Estime. I don't know if it's a one game they wanted a power back. You pick up Estime as a high priority free agent and you assume he's going to start, but just don't be surprised if the rug gets pulled out and it's back to Williams. I've got to see a second week, but running backs are a scarce commodity.
Yeah, he's, especially over the past 3 weeks when there hasn't been other, it's been like Cam Akers as a backup obvious candidate, like a Trey Benson or Blake Corum, where you're expecting X, Y, and Z starter to leave. When Estime is getting work, he becomes a high priority free agent, like you mentioned, pickup. But it's not guaranteed, this Broncos offense being frustrating. I think the Broncos win because the Falcons do dumb things often, and this is a style meets fight. The secondary for the Broncos is really good. Falcons like to pass a lot. It's possible that Bijan Robinson does not get involved or does not do nearly as much as he has in past matchups. And yet I think the Falcons are a better team. They just match up poorly against the Broncos.
You hit the nail on the head, Joe. This is a very bad matchup. Kirk Cousins is not good when he's under pressure, and the Broncos are getting fast pressure. And Kirk Cousins is not comfortable. You mentioned the outside corners. You got Patrick Surtain, you got Riley Moss, and Drake London is – they're going to have to get him some quick hitters, but if they don't get that, this is not a Mooney game. Darnell Mooney, he's been great. This is not a Mooney game, I don't think, and I don't even think it's a Kyle Pitts game. So they're going to struggle to score points here. This is going to be fought in the mud. It is an under game for sure. Bijan Robinson, between his running and receiving, should get enough done, but this isn't a good matchup at all for this Falcons offense. I'm not looking for them to score many points here.
Over under at 44. Again, if you're throwing a 7-point teaser in there, I will gladly take under 51. But I feel more comfortable saying this is an under at 44 than just about anything else on the Week 11 slate. So,
Joe, I got it 19-13. I mean, I got 32 points being scored here.
Yeah, I think comfortably under 40 is where I'd go with as well too. I don't know a way in which, unless there's a defense touchdown or a blocked kick, something weird like that. That's the scenarios. Yeah, I mean, that's going to happen. Vegas seems to know that stuff. So it's almost one of those suspicious lines because it just seems so out of character. And normally Vegas knows something for whatever reason. So let's go to an NFC West battle, and matters a lot from a divisional perspective. The Seahawks traveling to San Francisco. Seahawks at 4-5, Niners at 5-4. You get the Cardinals sniffing around the top of the division. The Rams are still technically around as well too. Maybe some weather impacting things. Noah Fant of the group seems to be the most questionable and unlikely to play.
Right.
We'll have to see his stats. DK Metcalf has missed, of course, the past couple games. Seahawks were in a bye. I think Metcalf returns because this game matters a lot. And then George Kittle should be back. We saw Christian McCaffrey make his return as well too and immediately jump into prominence. Jordan Mason doesn't matter. Cut Garendo, whatever it might be. I think the Niners win comfortably, but 6.5 is a very big number for games of the NFC West caliber, which are always weird, it feels like.
These divisional games, they always can get crazy. And we've seen in the history of this matchup, 49ers will get a big lead, and then the Seahawks worm their way back in the game. So, yeah, if I'm a bettor in this one, I'm liking the points because that's kind of been the history of the matchup. Right now, the interesting play is Charvarius Ward missed last week due to a personal issue. Now, hopefully he's back because that's the Metcalf's supposed to play. When Metcalf and Ward lock up, that's a tough matchup. Those two battle, and it's hard for Metcalf to have a big game against him. But Metcalf on the field, here's the big point. He opens up the field for that entire offense, and when he does, Kenneth Walker has more room to run, and the 49ers are not a good run defense at all this year. So if Metcalf plays, Kenneth Walker could do really, really well as a runner and a receiver. I think overall the 49ers are going to get pressure and obvious passing downs, though, because that offensive line for the Seahawks is a disaster. Other side of the ball, of course, we already saw Christian McCaffrey's heavily involved. Didn't look phenomenal as a runner. The Seahawks tend to load up to get after him. He'll get it done as a receiver and be fine for fantasy. But otherwise, I think if Deebo Samuel's healthy, that's a big. The middle of the field
Sure.
is really where you want to attack them. This may not be the best Jennings game. I think when he sees Reek Woolen, that might be a little bit of a tougher matchup for him. So that's the only concern I have with Jennings is a matchup.
We've talked about a bunch of like streaming low-end quarterback ones, whether it be Sam Darnold, in this case Geno Smith against the Niners, Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins. Do you like Russell Wilson over a lot of this group? And that's where I go back to with the Ravens being a defense that allows a lot passing-wise. Sam Darnold against the Titans. How is this like quartet or like what's your rankings quarterback 9 through 14 or 15 right now? I think that's a really interesting conversation.
You want to know my quarterbacks 9 through
15? Yeah, let's just like in that range. Yeah, what do you have for that? Because I know you do all the ranking stuff for us. And a lot of that different for like content.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm opening them up right here.
Yeah. So again, I'm thinking like where does Russell Wilson fit in with the Sam Darnolds and
yeah, I got
Geno Smith too.
Look, I have Darnold ranked too high. The options aren't good at quarterback. So
that's where I'm going with. Yes,
I have him at quarterback 10 because I think he throws 2 touchdowns.
Okay.
L'Jarius Sneed's been out multiple games. I mean, I can't count him being back, and if he is, I can't see him giving Jefferson. So I think he gets 2 touchdowns. You had who was another one?
Where do you have Russell Wilson ranked this week?
I have him at 17 because if he doesn't connect that 3 moon balls, again, I just don't think he's good enough underneath.
Okay.
He's so boomer, but the yardage is never high with him.
So then Kirk Cousins, would you be playing him over Russell Wilson? I'm just going. I'm sure people are dealing with the streaming quarterback question too.
You know, in Cousins, I usually like him. This is a disaster matchup for my quarterback 20 this week.
Okay.
So I would play Wilson ahead of Cousins, and I would play Darnold ahead of them
over
both
of those. All right, yeah. And that makes sense. The Titans' defense isn't very good. We think the Vikings should win and win pretty easily, even if Darnold doesn't throw more than 200 yards. The game script and the Vikings defense with Brian Flores scheming things against Will Levis will put them in favorable spots to score more likely than the other teams. I'm with you on that one. The Russell Wilson over Kirk Cousins one, that's where I'm at too. Kirk Cousins is probably more rostered than Russell Wilson.
Correct.
And that might need to change here for Week 11. We have 2 more games that I want to discuss real quick on the slate. Bengals Chargers. It's the Sunday night game. This is going to be an interesting one because the Chargers don't want to pass. The Bengals have no idea how to stop the pass. So it's possible the Chargers are going to just be like, hey, Justin Herbert, who was looking really, really good the 3 weeks prior when they faced teams that might actually need to matter more, not the Titans. I mean, they're going to – Justin Herbert has never played better. I've covered the Chargers now for my entire time at RotoWire. I think he's been excellent. The numbers don't show it, obviously. And I don't think it's just, it's because they only passed the ball 18 times. Like, it's not Jared Goff. Like, Herbert he doesn't miss throws right now.
No.
I want a prolific Justin Herbert game, and I think it could happen here against the Bengals.
Yeah, in terms of which receiver gets it done, I can't tell you that because it
True.
could be any of them. We get those Quentin Johnson coverage busts, and he gets open downfield, and Herbert finds him, and he finds McConkey. Look, Josh Palmer occasionally gets a big play, but it gets done. Will Dissly gets involved. But you're right, Herbert's playing at a phenomenal level. And here's the thing. A lot of people think the Bengals are just a throwaway defense. Their run defense has been good. I didn't see that coming this year. They've been way better than I expected. They slowed Derrick Henry down in 2 games they faced him. Now, Henry had to run in overtime in their first meeting. Otherwise, he only had like 40 scrimmage yards in regulation. So I don't think that Jim Harbaugh running game gets going here. So it's going to be passing, and they're going to have to keep up because the Bengals are like white hot on offense. My guess is as of Wednesday, they get T. Higgins back. They didn't put him on IR. He missed 3 games. This would be the 4th. So, I mean, I would think more probable than not. We'll find out as the injury reports come in. But that said, yeah, I think this game is higher scoring than many expect. And the Chargers defensively have been great. They've had an easier schedule. They played a 3 safety look. It has really taken away a lot of their 2 corners being out. They've been able to counter that. But again, Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow are just playing at another level right now.
I'm trying not to answer too many questions in the chat, but I think Tyler actually asks one I want to lead into. If we think the Chargers have to pass and you're looking for a streaming tight end option, is Will Dissly among your top 12 starting tight ends this week or close to it? I had missed it, but over the past 2 weeks, Will Dissly, despite Hayden Hurst being healthy, has effectively pushed Hayden Hurst out of that pass-catching platoon of the tight ends. And you still see a lot of blocking options out there, but Dissly is out there as the pass catcher instead of Hayden Hurst, which was not something that was happening earlier this year.
Dissly is a good streamer. The Bengals allowed the 4th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends, and that in theory they're weak there. Their linebacker and safety play isn't what we'd like it to be against the tight end. So they do have Dissly will be a very, very sneaky play this week. Other side of the ball, Tanner Hudson though is too. Tanner Hudson had 7 targets and a touchdown.
Not Gesicki, right? That's the emphasis here. Yep.
And when Eric All went out, So we saw Tanner Hudson move into Eric All's receiving role, but Tanner Hudson gets more targets. We remember last year, second half of the year, Tanner Hudson was seeing 4 to 6 targets in almost every game, and he's a very reliable possession receiver.
We have a chat here mentioned here from Sal. He has CMC. I would assume I got CMC for Tracy and Swift. So he traded and acquired CMC by giving up Tracy and Swift. I would assume that you like the CMC side of things now that we have to wait. We don't have to wait anymore for CMC's injury. But is the Tracy part of things, Tyron Tracy on bye, Swift again going into the Packers this week, Bears offense kind of floundering. How big of a win is it? Is probably my answer to this question to you.
Look, we have no idea how McCaffrey's going to hold up, but this is a trade where you're trying to win a fantasy championship. You push your chips in and you hope that CMC becomes a CMC we know and love. He's already getting the work. That's a problem number one. That's out of the way. He 2 carries were given, like I said, 1 to Mason, 1 to Garendo, all the work to McCaffrey. So if McCaffrey could begin to look in the next 2 to 3 weeks like the player that we've seen in the past, that's a steal. But if he looks like the player he did this last week, you lose the deal. If he doesn't improve from what he looked like last week, it was a decent game. It wasn't great. You're banking on him returning, and that could happen.
Yeah, 2 running backs for 1. Depends on the other team needs those 2 guys. I like Tyrone Tracy a lot. He's impressed me, and I would assume we're going to see Drew Lock after the bye for the Giants. But, yeah. Okay, yeah, so that would be thanks again, Sal, for sending that out there. Last game here, Texans-Cowboys. Not a whole lot to talk about other than Jerry Jones doesn't know what the sun is anymore, where it's positioned. Cooper Rush, awful. Trey Lance might be worse. You're playing everyone from the Texan side of things, but Nico Collins especially, right? Sounds like he should be making his return Monday night.
Yeah, Nico Collins obviously gets right back in that lineup, and that raises C.J. Stroud's floor. But look, Joe Mixon is going to have a big day on the ground. Dallas can't stop the run, so it's going to be Joe Mixon. It's going to be Nico Collins, maybe a splash of Tank Dell. But I think they're going to control this game. They're not going to have to throw a ton. Collins will get his 100 yards, probably get you a touchdown. Dell probably gets you 45 to 60 yards in that range, but Joe Mixon probably gets you about 130 combined yards and 1 or 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I've been talking about different teaser options. Texans fair by 7.5. If you do the 7-point tease, they win by half point, and then you just pick whatever. Broncos, Falcons as the under at 51. I think that's about as slam dunky as you get, so I probably put the Bartle jinx on things, but I think the Texans win convincingly, and I would be very shocked if the Cowboys really generate any sort of offense. That was as bad as it was going to look, I thought, last week. And for the Battle of Texas, I think the Houston Texans might have already taken care of business before the game has even taken place. Any other notes here before we sign off on the Wednesday show, Jim?
No, just I had cautioned people with Cooper Rush last week. The last time we saw him in 2022, he was 5-1, which was great. But we knew it was a great offensive line. They had the Zeke Pollard running tandem. They had a great defense. He has none of that. And CD was less than 100%. This offense is going to be a big problem.
Yeah. Thank you, Sal, again, who is sending in the questions, and other listeners and commenters on the chat. Reminder, Jim has his show on Sunday at 11 Eastern. We're going over all the different start-sit options out there. You do a lot of stuff on SiriusXM as well, too, Channel 87 if you have that platform. Jim's great in every facet. You can do him on Jim Coventry NFL as well on Twitter. He'll help you out with anything. And I know you do a lot of other videos, probably today as well, too. It's been great seeing you in the office, Jim. Looking forward to seeing more of your content out there. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We're going to sign things off and be back next Wednesday.